Hey, this is your host V from Creative Block. I will be representing Creative Block at Lightbox Expo in Pasadena, October 24th to 26th at table 505. Come say hi and grab some free merch. On to the episode. Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew. We talk shop with other creatives in animation and comics about things like finding your artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on Magma.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. By the way, we're trying to reach 10K subscribers on YouTube by January. So if you're listening and you're not following the podcast just yet, hit that subscribe button.
Today we have with us Benjy Brooke. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's great to be here.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like this is so exciting because for me, first of all, as a fan of Scavengers Reign, but also having seen a lot of common side effects, I'm really excited to talk about making these shows.
I'm so excited!
It's very exciting. How much of it did you actually get to see? Did you see all the way through to the end?
I actually did not see the last two episodes, and I was so sad, but that means I will rewatch the entire show when it drops on Max.
It does look really good so far. You guys are doing something very interesting.
I'm very excited about that show in particular. I mean, it's a crazy. I talked a lot while we were making it about how I'm assuming how rare it is to go from a show that you care so much about, like Scavengers, to another one that you care just as much about, and even more, because I mean, I think a factor was we were starting our own studio, doing it completely independently, and a lot of the artists from Scavengers came over to Common Side Effects, so it was like a team.
Do you have like a 4-leaf clover grow up in your house or something? like how do you, like, are you like cultivating 4-leaf clover? How do you have such good? I mean, it's probably sounds dismissive to say it's good luck, but I think that a lot of people in the industry would be like, that is so fortunate. I think to be so excited.
It
about
is extremely
two
fortunate.
Projects in a row, even.
Yeah. It's extremely fortunate. I've gone through the ringer where, on a project that I start caring about and then end feeling a little burnt, or stringing projects together that mostly feel like technical exercises that don't feel like spiritually gratifying. This was a perfect storm of so many things happening at the same time. We had already all been working together for a long time, this whole kind of collective of artists. So, and a bunch of new people that we hadn't worked with coming together on Scavengers, testing, kicking the tires on a process. And then Joe, he's still very much involved in Scavengers throughout the entire production, but halfway through, he started pitching Common Side Effects. And so before Scavengers was even complete, we knew we were lined up to make Common Side Effects. Huge credit to all of this is down to Charles and Joe, and then Joe and Steve, who created Common Side Effects. Common denominator, there's Joe, and he's got dozens and dozens of projects that are kind of either ideas that he spent like the last 10 years working on that could eventually get spun out into shows, or ideas in the back burner that could be shows eventually, and then pitching very regularly. So we got very lucky just that rhythm landed.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you all had been working together prior to even Green Street Pictures being a studio, right?
Yeah. I met Joe and Sean back in I don't know when it was, 2013 at the Brooklyn Animation Festival.
Oh.
It was probably when, I can't remember what I had in competition, but when Late Night Work Club just started out.
That's the first time I feel like that's the first time that I had seen your guys' stuff too.
I wasn't involved in Late Night Work Club, but it was really what started to get me interested in moving out of commercial animation and into more short film narrative animation.
How did you, just quick question, how long were you in commercial animation before you made that short? And
well, I graduated in 2010, and then I just kind of a series of odd jobs. I worked as a mortgage assigner at a real estate law firm, and I did canvassing door to door for NYPIRG, New York Public Interest Research Group. Wow. And in like, I kind of moonlit as a animator, getting into motion graphics and doing a little bit of traditional animation on the side, but started learning After Effects. And then a buddy of mine, Mike, had a little studio in Brooklyn that he invited me to help out on, and we made a lot of concert visuals for DJs. And then we started doing commercial work together, and it was really like small jobs that we would be paid, a couple grand to make a little, almost like a Fiverr kind of thing for some of the early projects. And then we got repped, and we got more larger scale projects, and then I started working the Hornet. But it was maybe like 6 or 7 years working with Hornet as a director, an animator, and then a director. And then I think I was able to take the jump into more like TV and film when I made that short film Power Hungry in 2016. And that, but yeah.
I love that short. Was that with Super Deluxe? Am I remembering incorrectly?
It was Super Deluxe, yeah.
I remember seeing that and how smooth everything felt, and like I think that I had come from I was animating in Adobe Animate all the time, and I remember like everything feeling so clunky. But what did you animate that in?
It was all done in TV Paint.
Yeah, that's why. I was like, how is he doing it?
And I mean, it was kind of an exercise in just masochism. It was like 6 months of work, and I think the total budget was 13 grand, and I paid my sound designer composer out of that. And then at the time I was living in upstate New York in a little town called Ithaca. My cost of living was really low, and I spent whatever time that wasn't spent working on commercial work. I would just do little GIFs and put them on Tumblr, and it was sort of like an exercise in figuring out production methods that I wanted to learn. Like I really wanted to work at Golden Wolf in the line, and trying to teach myself the way that they work.
I love that you're bringing that up, because it shows. I always kind of try to figure out a way for people to come up with like a project, and like you having this goal, like, okay, that's a studio that I'm aiming for. How can I do something that looks like their work? I think that's really smart. I also like that you brought up upstate New York being like low costs of living.
Yeah. I kept thinking about it as like my wood shedding time, like a period of time when I could really like hunker down and not worry about how making ends meet. I mean, it's not, a cheap city, because it's it's a college town. So yeah, I think I really recommend to anyone who wants to get in, you kind of have to either get a internship or a job that'll allow you to work, lower level in a production, which just can't often give you like the time and the bandwidth you need to go really, really deep. I don't know. I love just the freedom that it allowed me to, and I think all of us you get super obsessive about it in the mid-20s, and you just want to see how far you can push it. I mean, for you guys, what were your first jobs?
I feel like, well, my first industry job honestly was on a show. It's so crazy because it was the same studio that's doing Miraculous Ladybug now, but at the time they didn't really have any animated shows, and they were trying to make these like really crazy deals. So I ended up on the show that, I mean, it looks like the price it got to make the amount of episodes they did, but it was like 104 episodes of 7 minutes with a budget of €1.5 million. So it was like the crew was like 4 or 5 board artists, and that's kind of it. That was kind of all that was. And like everything else was done overseas, like in China and Malaysia, I think.
Yeah.
It was co-produced by Inspidi. Yeah, that was my first job. So I think like, and it was like the budget was so low for the board artists. It was just like, I think none of the seasoned board artists like were gonna take that job because they were just kind of like,
Right.
like, yeah. So it was just like all of us like fresh out of school, like, yay, let's just
Work for nothing. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I remember my first job was with a studio that was called Fox ADHD.
Oh yeah, similar to
Yeah.
Super Deluxe.
It was one of those things where I think it was a studio that developed a little bit of a rough rap, but I don't know if I've ever been at a studio that accumulated such a concentration of like new, really interesting talent and animators in like weird different styles, because they had like they had a department where they paid 8 people to just make GIFs for a living, and so that room was just filled with like super interesting styles, and then they were making and pitching all these shows. So a lot of the people they were bringing.
Were you in that room? Was that what the room you were in?
I was in the room where I started off. I started off in the writing room, and then I got fired, and then I pitched a bunch of shorts, and then I got to do a short, and then I got hired onto the shorts team. So we were making a new minute-long short every single week, in between like maybe 6 people. And my first job, in my first year, I think I made like 56 shorts or something. It was like a crazy start to like a portfolio.
That's such a great way to get a ton under your belt, and just
and they were all in different styles too. So because they were parody shorts for the most part. So it was like working on a different show every week almost. And I think it was like it was really difficult, and by today's standards we did not get paid super well. But I met a lot of the people that I still keep up with today there for sure.
Definitely a crash course in making TV that I feel like commercial animation isn't. Like, commercial animation often can just be a technical kind of process, and you're just learning how to physically do it, but you're not actually boarding, entertainment.
Well, you were saying that at Green Street, it's sort of like a lot of you were sort of making up the pipeline a little bit, because you haven't worked on a lot of like more established shows. I think that Fox ADHD was like that too. Like they did this experiment where they took the shorts team and they said, okay, we're going to hire a new shorts team. We're going to put you guys in all the show positions. And like, you will be the storyboard artist. You will be the style of the show. You will be the person that figures out how the head packs and the mouths work and stuff. And we did that for a show called Lucas Brothers Moving Company.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like figuring out like, okay, how do you do this? And then
I'd say definitely Scavengers is more traditional than I think we probably would have done it if we had just dived in and been given the full budget.
Sure.
And without the guardrails of working with Titmouse. I think I learned a lot working with Titmouse for a long time. Our line producer, Maud Lewis, was amazing. The whole production staff was incredible. And in the end, it's a very traditional pipeline, and so is Common Side Effects. It's the same, strict distinctions between departments. I think if there's cross-pollination going on where storyboard artist becomes an animator, it's because they've moved into that department, or they've
okay.
It's not like a totally loosey-goosey dynamic, because that can get really exploitative. And I think it's just wanting to make sure people are aware of what their jobs are.
Mm-hmm.
What would you describe as the unorthodox parts? Because you were saying that it was a little that you guys were like figuring out how to do it maybe in a slightly different way, right?
I think the most unorthodox elements were probably just breaking patterns and habits that artists tend to have in animation. That's more of a philosophical difference, and also wanting artists to take their work all the way to completion rather than having like board revisionists, board cleanup artists. I think there's a feeling that when you have storyboard artists passing work back and forth, it can often have a diluting effect, where you have this really clear. I mean, the reason it has to happen is because the pipeline is so intense, and the process is like, you gotta move artists on to the next episode. Revisionists are finishing up past episodes. But as much as we possibly could, we wanted artists to be able to treat their board sequences as final, like they're like a comic book or like illustration.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much emotional resonance that can come out of the final cleanup
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean, I don't want to denigrate like the art of storyboard cleanup, but it is a process of like, you got to pick up for where somebody left off, interpret their intention. And
Mm-hmm.
when you see a storyboard, yeah.
No, that's so true what you're pointing at. And also because like cleaning up, sometimes it can be hard as a revisionist or cleanup artist to know how much of yourself you can insert in the shot. And when it is the original like creator of the shot, the original like board artist, you can add all of these like subtleties, like a blink or a head turn or a slight angle to the body that would be very hard for a revisionist to pepper in unless the director explicitly kind of said.
Yeah.
And so how would you kind of describe the way you established the style for Scavenger's Reign, both like in the art design, but also in the filmmaking, because it's very, I don't think there's any show like that out there with that very cinematic live action. I guess the closest thing I can think of would be maybe like anime, like Satoshi Kon type of anime. You know what I'm saying?
That is, I mean, Satoshi Kon is such a influence, I think, on what we were doing. But you know, to get it even within striking distance of what he does is insane. But I think the film is like the main reference point is the key thing, and I mean, that's the other element, I think, of what we did differently on Scavengers than a lot of traditional TV pipeline productions is trying to make it as much of a feature film as possible, which is really difficult to do. And there's a lot of reasons that TV has generally fixed horizon and TV sitcom animation style. And it makes artists' lives more manageable, I think, to work on something that has a little more of a on rails system. But I find that the freedom that you get when you are just said, you know, don't worry about reuse, don't worry about don't worry about anything at all other than having fun and making the material work. We find efficiencies after that. It's like, you take that first stab, and then there's ways to repeat shots, obviously, and do A and B coverage. But that was the main goal with Scavengers, was watching movies like, have you guys seen Sorcerer?
I have not.
It's this movie. Is it Friedkin, I think? And it was just finding these kind of oddball reference points for specific things we were doing, like tension in Scavenger's Reign was looking at a scene in Sorcerer. It's all about these trucks, these people from all walks of life who, out of desperation, come to this small town, I think it's in Bolivia, and they have a job to take nitroglycerin in these trucks to help put out an oil rig fire. And they have to go through the jungle in this very treacherous path across these little bridges, crazy bridges. And if the trucks get jostled even a little bit, they explode. And it's just like on a high wire the entire time. And there's a scene in it where a truck in the middle of a rainstorm is trying to go over this bridge. It's actually the poster image for the movie. And the way that it's cut, it's just traditional filmmaking, but like cutting to the rope, and then cutting back to the truck, and then the water below. And it's using those principles to just build up tension and letting storyboard artists be as free as possible.
It's really cool.
Yeah. That is so appealing for sure, for like a board artist to be like, wow, I don't have to think about any like reuse or any of that like very technical aspect, because I do think like it is so freeing. I personally, I remember in my career sometimes being on some shows where I felt very like what's the word, like
Stifled.
Yeah, because it's like, well, you want to make everybody's job easier, not just your own. So you're trying to make the backgrounds team job easier, so you can't do the up shots, you can't do down shots, because it's also like kind of impacts animation and all that. But after a while, it is like so nice to be able to kind of like just be freed from that. So I really like that perspective. I don't know that you're.
I was gonna just add that I think another reason why we were able to do all of this is that Charles was the co-creator as well as the art director. So the dictate was coming from Charles and Joe to do this, and then all of that burden then gets flopped onto Charles's plate. And he's not pushing back. He's not saying, hey, I can't deal with all these crazy angles. He's saying, I'll bring it on more and more. And his team, I think another reason why I think Scavengers worked so well is that there was a general feeling of like purpose to the mission. Everyone was very excited to try to do this feature film quality animation on a TV show timeline and budget. And so it was just an all hands on deck. Yeah, same thing with Common Side Effects, but with Common Side Effects, we had the benefit of it being more of a comedy, but this is all the same rules apply. We just wanted it to be as free as possible.
I do think what's amazing with both of these shows is that, well, maybe more Common Side Effects than Scavengers Reign, because Scavengers Reign had like a lot of animation. It was like very, like there's so much animated, like very often in each episode, but Common Side Effects is very clever with the way it's staged. I was talking with a friend of mine about how well the economy of the writing, because I don't remember a lot of scenes where there's more than two characters. There's some scenes where there's more characters on screen, but a lot of them are very kind of like intimate in a way, and I think that kind of really helps with
if there are more than two characters on screen, there might be two characters in the background who are doing kind of like observational business. There's a lot of that show is like, I mean, when there are a bunch of people on screen, we just tried to do what a Coen Brothers movie might do, and you cut back to characters in the background. They give each other a look, like a little raised eyebrow and a nudge, and the timing of it does all the work.
So you're talking about timing here. I know for a lot of like adult animation, like board artists do a first pass for timing. That's pretty common. But how do you kind of finalize that very specific timing? There's like a sense of timing that is very, I don't know, one of a kind, I guess, in Common Side Effects.
Well, a lot of that, and Joe is definitely a master at comedic timing, and we all worked really closely with, and obviously Steve too. I mean, Steve comes from American Dad, Veep, 30 Rock. It's like the greatest timed comedies ever. Yeah. The Office. So it's all written in there. It feels like it's like the rhythm of it is in the script. And then,
is there anyone else we need to shout out for being a genius comedic timing person? Just so we don't leave anyone out. And
Tony Christopherson.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
we got some more.
Our editor. And I so rarely say it. Yeah. But yeah, Tony and Joey Lim, who's our assistant editor and was the assistant editor on Scavengers Reign too, and she's also an incredible like artist in her own right. And there's gonna be a lot of shout outs happening, I think.
It's okay.
I got a little forgetting. No, man. Now I'm gonna encyclopedia brain. I'm gonna bring it out, but. We have the studio now. V's seen it, and Sean, you should come by anytime.
Oh, I'd love to.
And on the 8th floor of the building, we have one of the edit suites, and we work with Tony every day, just bringing the thumbnails into the edit or the rough boards, and then continuing to finesse the time. A lot of the time, we would work with him, beat something out, might have a specific moment that we kind of sweat over together, and then Tony would go off and do his magic, and the next time we see it, it's just like tightened up another, 1,000%. And yeah, Jason Klein on Scavengers, same kind of thing. Total trust. And Jason came from more of a live action editing background. I mean, what I think Joe, and I've learned so much from working with Joe on every project, but getting to do common side effects, which is really trying to tap into this hyper specific comedic timing that he does in his short films. So we just dissected a lot of the little moves, and it's a lot of like little head shakes on ones, these little ticks and little hand movements. In that the preview for Common Side Effects, it's out on YouTube. There's a scene that I got that whole preview is basically animated by Joe, Sean Buckaloo, and then Wes McLean, the art director, did the backgrounds. We added a lot in after that's in the final version, but he made that as a test to pitch the show. And so Joe animated a lot of those scenes, like them dancing in the car. And the one that we kept going back to was the DEA supervisor agent with his little hand, and he's doing this like rolling his fingers. And it just is these little moves that you have to be a good actor and record yourself and really think about not being, not thinking about what cliches are already in animation. Just be as.
Yeah. I think that's like what's so impressive with that trailer is that it's so observed and it's so nice and funny to see these moments. I mean, obviously, like the car scene is everybody's favorite. I remember watching the pilot for the first time and seeing the car scene, and I was like, hell yeah, like I love this show.
Well, I had a similar moment where Joe sent it to me. We were working on Scavengers, and he said, hey man, check this out. And he sent me the first 5 minutes of Common Side Effects, and I was just totally blown away by how smart it is, how funny, and it gave me a feeling of watching like a Steve Martin movie from 1995.
Yes.
I was like, how did you? I don't even know how to articulate what that is. Like, I don't know what that is.
It's like there's a lot of like really quirky, small little like it's not super over the top slapstick. It's like small micro slapstick or something like that.
Exactly.
Like little
the little movement with the hands in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. The hands are so fun. Yeah.
I think that's something that people don't talk about enough. The idea that animators and storyboard artists have they have to tap into acting, and a lot of the times when you get voice records, you don't see what they did with their hands or their face or whatever. You're making it up, and I think that the animators that can suck you in and make you feel like their characters are real they're also good actors, but in this like different way. It's like acting through their hands or something.
Acting through their hands, and I have a feeling would be good actors just if you put a camera in front of them. And
probably.
And I know Joe is. I mean, he's a terrific actor, and Sean too. And so many of our board artists are just like, people are so funny, and I feel like with another path out in front of them, they might be actors.
So that one thing that I wanted to ask about, like as far as like when you're assembling a team on a project, like maybe less so on Scavengers Reign, but more so on Common Side Effects, like I'm assuming that there's an sort of an extra step of like, it's not just that you're a good draftsman.
Yeah.
Like are you looking for funny people too, and how do you gauge that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think generally a feeling that given the opportunity, people who do action animation can also be funny. People who have an extreme technical ability, given the material, they'll knock your socks off because people are funny. And we've been surprised so many times that people are like, I don't know, I've never seen any comedy boards from this person before, and you give them a scene, and with the right kind of kickoff, they know what to go for and what sensibility you're looking for. And it's observation and analysis, just like any movement is. So somebody who's really smart and can figure out, how to make somebody do a backflip, like draw somebody doing a crazy physical move, can then similarly dissect what makes comedy funny. So I don't generally like look for people who are doing just comedy boards, but often it's like a combination of the two. I kept thinking of this thing that one of the board artists we work with is just a great artist, Vincent Albert. He did V, you worked with. Did you work with Vincent? Or you just know him?
I actually worked with him super fast on just one little scene, and I was really impressed that like he works super clean. I was like, wow,
yeah.
He's really good.
Yeah, and I think with the working super clean, I mean he roughs out very loosely, and then he'll tie it down pretty quickly. But it's a way of like getting a really out there idea across the finish line, because you're pitching something that's already fully baked and not.
You have to be specific. Yeah,
you're very specific. But he has this thing on his Instagram that it must have been it was like an exercise for school. That's Naruto animated beautifully, but better than the show. Just like full Naruto animation of him in a classroom, but lip sync to Donnie Darko, and it's this like I can't remember the line, but just like the kind of acting he was doing, it's these really specific hand motions and gestures. But then just the idea of doing Naruto with Donnie Darko tickled me, so I just like got the humor.
That's so funny. I feel like something that I find refreshing also is that at Green Street you're not afraid of reaching out to people like in France, in India, in like all over the world. I think that's really cool. And I was kind of wondering, how do you even get in touch? Like, how do you find all these artists? Are you just perusing the Instagrams?
yeah, pretty much just Instagram, YouTube, Shorts, and I mean, I need to get back to it. I deleted Instagram a few months ago, and it's
really
the greatest thing I've ever done for myself. I don't know how long ago it was. It was like maybe a few weeks ago. I didn't delete my account, but I just deleted it from my phone. And
yeah, I see. Yeah.
Have you guys done this before?
Do you feel at peace?
I feel at peace.
I've never done it.
I've never
done it.
I just was waking up every morning, opening it up, and it's mostly promoted. It's mostly the Moodangs of the world, and I love a Moodang, but like that is like total crack for your monkey brain, and you can't escape it.
Yeah.
That's so true. I feel like, I don't know, I'm such a narcissist because if I don't post, I don't really check Instagram.
You post
like you're not checking other people's work. You're posting your own stuff and then signing off.
Yeah, I'm just
Goodbye. Bye. No,
I was just like, I only care about me. I only care about me.
No.
I mean, I will say, however, like I'm gonna try not to go on a big rant about Instagram.
Oh, go on a rant, please. Yeah.
I mean, I think what's tough is that you can't really. I mean, you can cater the algorithm to your needs. Like if you really go out of your way to save, like, and comment on other artists' art and other artists like animation, eventually the algorithm will pick it up and show you mostly just animation. And there is a way to do it. It's just that, like, I think the algorithm really, really wants to shove like cute little animals in your face, which is also great, but also like sometimes, like you said, it is like crack.
I'm jealous of your algorithm. My algorithm is people like getting into car crashes and people with like a giant foot or like a giant hand.
Well, it's because you look at it for a little too long, then it knows you want that giant hand. Give you more of that giant hand.
No, the worst is like I'll be like cooking or something like that, and I'll leave my phone on accident, and I'll hear it repeating over and over again, and I'll hear it repeating something I definitely don't want on my algorithm, but like my hands are all wet.
It's funny because I feel like you're not the only one to say that, Sean. I've met other people who are like, yeah, my algorithm freaks me out. There's just like only horrible things happening on there. But for me, it's just cute birds, cute cats, animals being cute, which I really enjoy. But also sometimes I go in there and I'm like, an hour later, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I know all the different ways the cat can drink water now, at least.
That's critical information.
Exactly.
Critical information. Yeah. Similarly, I think it was like just was watching so many chiropractor videos. I think that's where I just like decided I gotta cut it. I gotta just cut the umbilical cord. Like I don't remember.
Does your back hurt?
No, it's just the most satisfying thing to watch happen to somebody.
I thought it was one of those things. You know how like sometimes people who are losing weight watch the Food Channel and try to like eat with their eyes. I thought I was like, does your back hurt? And you're just watching people get their back fixed, and you're like, please.
Maybe it started when I had a back problem, but I don't think it did. I think it's just.
Yeah, I got you.
You just watch a guy get a towel wrapped around his neck, and then the chiropractor is just having a chit chat, slow, just trying to like ease him into it, and then pulls when he doesn't expect it, and they've mic'd up his spine somehow, and
using the ASMR mics with his spine. Have you seen the ones where they put a balloon in their nose and inflate their sinuses?
Yes. I don't really like that one. There's no satisfying crack with that, right? It doesn't like.
Yeah, that's more like you're like that person is very uncomfortable, and you're like, that must suck, and but.
That's actually kind of scary. I understand why your algorithm is the way it is now, Sean.
What? No. I can't. Sean, I can't legitimately complain.
No shade.
For real.
I mean, I would get 9/11 footage on my Instagram algorithm, and I would pause, wondering why I'm being shown this, and then it would feed me more because I paused on it.
Oh.
But
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we don't need to talk about that.
No, that's okay.
So we were talking about like finding talent and stuff, and so going through mostly like YouTube and Instagram. Wait, so what did you end up doing when you got your free time back after you didn't have Instagram on your phone?
I think it's just that you find it filling holes in your day. That daydreaming is critical.
Mm-hmm.
This is also just like boomer shit to talk about, but I'm a big believer in like the creative juices just sort of come to you in the little moments in the day, and I do feel like we have been hijacked by corporate interests who want to take our attention.
I feel like a lot of artists that complain about not knowing what to draw or not having anything to draw, it's because they never like all day they're listening to a podcast or watching a video or like they don't allow themselves to like just think for a half an hour and allow yourself to get frustrated and just push past it and just make a habit of it. I think I've been writing a lot more. Oh, awesome.
I mean, I don't think it's just due to like turning off Instagram, but I definitely am happy I did it. I feel like I'm gonna, as soon as I start working on staffing up another project, I'm gonna dive back right back in it and just get connected back to that network of people that I love so dearly. I think also we all were working on online for I mean, I feel like the timeline is like 2010 to now, 2008 to now. So right when I graduated school, and so it feels like it's been almost a 15-year social experiment, and it's how I found my friends, it's how I found my network of people, it's how this studio came together, is people online, but getting an opportunity now that I'm actually here with my best friends in a studio. It's happening in real life, and I don't need to have as much of an online lifestyle, which is critical for a lot of people who are like more atomized and living out in the middle of nowhere or are working remotely.
I think that's so nice to hear that as well. Like, okay, there was a time in your life where social media was like critical, and you needed it for career opportunities, but now it's like you can kind of like let go of that, and like you're free, Benjy.
It's also, I think, it's just shifting like responsibility for myself and thinking more about longer term. I think the bigger issue with me and all of like my addiction to Instagram and Tumblr before it was that it create my burgeoning creative life was tied to the dopamine hit of posting something online. So I'm sure you both like understand that rhythm where you're like, I got to post something this week
Mm-hmm.
for my career, but deep down it's just so you can get that high from seeing the likes come in. And when you work on a show that takes a year and a half, or you're working on a studio that's going to be your whole life, I think those cycles feel a lot less important, and it's almost like step as far away from immediate gratification as you possibly can, and let the work build up and build up and build up more in private.
Can you talk a little bit about creating the studio, or like even like transitioning from the partnership with Titmouse to being your full like own studio?
Yeah, I mean, the studio had already started with, it was James Merrill, Joe Bennett, Sean Buckaloo. We just had technically the 4th anniversary, so they started it when they pitched Scavengers, because it was a co-production with Green Street and Titmouse, and all of the writing was done at Green Street, and the initial development, a lot of putting the teams together, and all of the original storyboard guides, animation guides, the kind of text for the production was done at Green Street. And then I was working at Titmouse already for years on various projects, and I was hired on as a director on Scavengers originally, and Sean was going to be supervising director. And then there was a conflict of interest where he was already a writer, he couldn't also be a supervising director. So I kind of stumbled my way into that role. And I'd worked on the pilot a little bit, but I hadn't really worked with Joe and Sean and Charles and James together. So that process of working with them on the show, I think we all just were like, this is such a great fit. And so by the end of Scavengers is when they asked me to join as a partner at Green Street.
Wow, that's so nice. That is so cool. I thought, that's so cool to see, like, because I feel like as a supervising director, you're just kind of like bound to like hang out with like like everybody a lot, right? Like the writers, the EPs and stuff.
I mean, it's here at the studio. It's sort of a rotating cast of people that are constantly in and out of the studio. Having the writing team here is really fun, and working with Steve on Common Side Effects was just hand in glove. I mean, his office was right next to mine, and we would go back and forth with Joe and talk about scenes and rewriting scenes if they needed to be rewritten, or adding little bits of dialogue, and it was just this really easy flow. I mean, have you guys worked with productions where like the writing is at the studio with Titmouse?
Yes. Yeah. I think that Mouse does that a lot too. Yeah.
I feel like it really depends on the show. I feel like for me in kids animation, I've kind of worked in all types of setups. I would say when I was on Loud House, we did have the writers on site, which was amazing, and it was like a writer's room working every day. So every day they were like breaking story and just kind of, so that was really cool. But after that, it was mostly just kind of like freelance writing. I think it's just for like budget reasons. They like a WB, they usually tend to have like a writer summit, and then it's just like freelancing out the writing, and they just keep like one person who is the story editor, I think is the title, and that person will go over all of the freelance scripts and like adjust it to the EP's notes and to fit the style of the show. Yeah. But for you on Scavengers and Common Side Effects, the writing team was there all the time, and you could interact with the crew all the time.
Oh yeah, especially on Scavengers, because Sean, James, Charles, and Joe are all writers on Scavengers, and so it was, every episode we were working really closely together. And Common Side Effects, I think it was more that we would have Steve always there, Joe always there, and then writers would come back after the writers' room had ended, and then we would have like Emma Berry sitting in on episode 3. I think sure what episode that they would write, they came back to watch like a picture lock cut just to give final notes, and usually dealing with any story elements that weren't working, because they had written the script, and then they come back and they're seeing, much further along in the production.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, what was it like to have a writer's room that's so visual artist heavy? Because most writers' rooms are not, in fact, to the point where I think a lot of writers don't trust visual artists with story in a lot of circumstances. So I'm just curious, what was that like? Did you balance it out with someone that had like lots and lots and lots of writing, like classic writing experience, or was it just you guys doing it your own way?
Yeah, I think on Scavengers, having Jenny Deeker and Jillian Goldfuss on the crew, and they had more traditional TV writing experience, but James Merrill, he's the fourth partner, so he comes from more of like a writer and producer background, so he's spent times in writers' room. He's been in writers' rooms his whole career, and Sean and Joe, I think, are just writers alongside being artists. They've always been writers and have been working on, Joe has written many, many, many scripts with other writers for other pitches he's done. Same thing with Sean, and Sean has written features and ton of all of his shorts and pilot scripts. So I think the experience is already there. Maybe there wasn't, for certain people, the writing credit, but a love of writing was definitely paramount. It just sort of happened to be people who are both writer artists. And I think a lot of that comes from just like out of necessity, you want to have control over what you're doing.
Sure.
I mean, you're both amazing writers. I love all of your shorts and V.
Thank you.
I have a stack of these RRR.
Whoa, that's cool.
When the movie RRR came out, were you like really pissed?
It's hard to find my stuff.
Honestly, like low key, I was a little bit jealous. I was a little bit like, God damn it! Like, I mean, but the movie's amazing. It's so fun.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh, like, because I don't know. For some reason, okay, I don't know what it is with me and the letter R, but a lot of the stories I come up with are like usually abbreviated with a lot of R's in them. So like Rodney or Rodney, 3 R's. And the other one that I want to do, I've been working on for a long time, is like an adaptation, so very loose adaptation of like Rosam's Universal Robots, which is like the first play that was ever written with the word robot. That's the
cool.
play that introduced the word robot. It's very cool. It's kind of like sci-fi-esque, but it's like it was written like in the late 1800s or something. So it's a little bit more like.
So it's not Asimov. Like, I think I always thought it was Asimov came up with that.
Yeah, no, it's not Asimov. I'm trying to place it. It's almost a little bit more in the realm of like, but that is abbreviated to RUR, which is another thing with 2 R's on it.
You are out of control. You need
you
an
really
editor.
are. Yeah,
you need an editor.
I do.
There are other letters.
There are other letters in the alphabet.
Do you wish that you were named? If you had to be an R name, what would it be?
Good question. I never thought about it
Is it
before.
a good question? I actually don't know if it's a good question.
Rodney is such a good name. It's like a name I
It is a good name.
haven't heard in a long time.
I literally
Rasputin.
I picked it through Animal Crossing because there's a character nobody likes, and his name is Ron. That's a funny name. It's a funny name. I like the names that are a little bit just kind of like out of fashion.
But
that's some juicy behind the scenes.
When you do the giant Bollywood blockbuster version of your comic, what do you call it?
Oh, those are like so.
Checkmate.
I'm not used to, like, as the host, I'm not used to getting.
I mean, you'll have to spell.
Questions.
You'll have to spell it all the way out instead of abbreviating it.
Yeah,
I feel like. Ooh,
or
can
like
you do like
the really remarkable Rodney or something kind of like silly like this.
Can you do R with a little 3, like an exponential?
That's pretty funny,
Rodney
but that's
to the third.
But it's not very Bollywood. That's kind of more like your indie, like that's kind of like the more like Sundance version of it, I think. You know, like or like more brainy, mathy.
Yeah, that's
kind of like
the Harvard version of it. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if it's Harvard, but Clem cut all this. Like we don't need.
No,
Clem,
leave
as much of it in as you think is funny.
Yeah, I think all of it. Look, you're off the hook. I doubt it'll be Bollywood. I think it will be capital H Hollywood. It'll be a massive. I'm very excited to read the rest of it whenever it's out. I am so hooked.
Oh my God! Thank you so much. I'm very worried now that I'm going to drop the ball, but it means a lot. Okay, we're still Clem. This is still cut from the podcast, but
Clem, you can leave this in if you like.
Oh no! Stop.
Override.
Override. Yeah.
Overrule.
Yeah, you can override.
Do I get to decide?
You get a veto vote.
Yeah. Great.
It's very exciting to hear somebody that, you know, like, I mean, I look up to your work, I look up to you, and it's just very cool to get that kind of feedback. So I appreciate it a lot, and thank you so much for even like reading the comic.
It's a page
very
turner.
happy.
It's a page turner.
It's a page turner.
Clem, leave that.
No, please. This is so embarrassing.
No. It's very sweet. I think it's very relatable also, but it's all good.
Well, Sean, what was the first work of Benjy that you ever saw, actually?
Oh, I already said it.
Oh, it was at the festival?
Power Hungry.
Power Hungry.
Yeah. I remember seeing that, and I think that I was pitching stuff to Super Deluxe. I didn't make anything with Super Deluxe, but I pitched to them, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, this rules. And I knew that you were involved with pretty much the same people that you're involved with now, because I had seen all of their work and everybody was gushing about their work, and I was like, why, what the hell, why can't and I was like, gotta level up. And yeah, but I mean, yeah, that was my first exposure to your stuff, and I think I'm curious about your experience before. So we know about you going on to these two big, really exciting projects that are like, I mean, it's so cool. I'd love to hear about where they're like kind of in between weird jobs that you worked. Did you pitch and it didn't go as planned? Do you have any stories where things weren't really sick?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to hear him. We gotta take you down a peg.
Yeah, no, you can take me down as many pegs as I deserve, and many pegs. Yeah, I think everything I did in my 20s, I look back and I think like, I wish I was doing something. I wish I had spent my time differently. I think, I feel like now I know exactly what I want to do and how I want to do it in a way that I didn't for so long. And I think focusing on sort of the wrong things. I was pitching ideas. I got, a manager, and I was pitching ideas and had no idea how to pitch anything other than I could draw really, really well, and I didn't know how to write that well. So it fundamentally, it's a writing medium, making TV.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can't just say, oh, I saw Perfect Blue and I want to make a Perfect Blue kind of show and do a bunch of drawings that look kind of like Perfect Blue, and then a show appears.
True.
I think the process of making Power Hungry is very like, it's the same process of any like personal artwork. You just kind of follow your nose, which you also, I think once you've honed enough of your storytelling craft, that following your nose leads to fruitful results. But before you put enough gas in the tank, you follow your nose and it'll lead to a lot of dead ends.
That's so true. And I love that you're bringing that up, because it kind of almost like following your nose almost kind of makes me think of finding your style or like your voice. How did you come to finding your like voice as an artist?
I mean, definitely through imitation in a big way, but like watching what other people were doing and seeing, the I mean, when I discovered Jonathan and Kondo's work in like 2012 or whenever that was, realizing that there's this, other path towards full, beautiful animation that serves, it's not checking any boxes that you'd see in any TV or film production, but it's a world that needs to be tapped into. I mean, you were asking about the style of Scavengers, and so much of it is just Jonathan's character design, and he worked really closely with Joe and Charles on the original short too. Mm-hmm. Joe always talked about wanting Scavengers to feel like it has this Rube Goldberg machine feeling to it, and the original short does, and it was this perfect. Joe already had that going on, and a lot of his shorts, this feeling of like little toys bumping together and tumbling into something. Jonathan too, and Charles too. So coming together, I don't know. It was all these minds speaking a similar language that did exist in a lot of short films. I think Midnight Gospel is like one of the only other shows I think that does that specific thing so well, being so experimental and letting artists just sort of follow their instincts.
Yeah,
that show is crazy.
That show is crazy.
that show's crazy. There's so much animation in that show. There's so much, and the world building. I mean, the interesting thing about that versus Scavengers is like in each episode they needed to build a whole new world and a style of buildings and all that stuff. For Scavengers, it's sort of like you are starting off in a world with a very small light that only reaches a certain distance, and then you're uncovering more things and how it's related to one another. I wanted to ask you, were you able to pitch a creature? Did you try pitching creatures?
I'm trying to think of a specific one. I remember being a big booster for the little Furby guy in episode 11. I think there was maybe a moment where he was going to get cut, but like thinking about like the way that an animal might like drink with its little paws. I mean, work closely with the animator Zihao Dudo on that one, but I mean, with Scavengers, there were definitely conversations that were had between just directors and board artists, and those would be like in the interim period between each check-in. But I was pretty much along the ride for every conversation that either was between Joe and myself, and then the directors. And then I was the like overall animation supervisor on the show all the way to the end. So really just working closely with every.
How much was there like when you're planning and writing whatever, like episode 5, and the board artists and the designers are starting episode 1 and figuring things out, or things are changing a little bit? Was how much wiggle room was there for like changing things that would change other parts in the script? I'm just curious how fluid things were, or were the scripts really like, this is exactly what needs to happen? I'm just curious.
I think the moment that we've mentioned a few times, come up in conversation a lot, is generally the scripts are very tight, and because there are artists writing those scripts, they have a very clear idea of like in the script it might be really detailed description of what needs to happen, or it might be leaving room for a lot of artistic interpretation. But either way, understanding that you gotta either trust the artist or give them all the information they need. Mm-hmm. I think the one big wrench that was thrown in was episode 4, and Rachel Reed directed. We had to rewrite. There was a moment where, I don't know if you remember, Ozzy opens up Levi's back. You see all the goo inside.
Yeah.
Ozzy starts to pull it out. Levi reacts, and then there's a conversation, and Ozzy decides to leave all the goo inside. Originally, it was written that Ozzy scrapes all of it clean and resets Levi to baseline robot.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And I think that was going to be Levi was basically going to be back to robot mode until Levi's death, and then the world would still put Levi back together. But realizing pretty quickly that it didn't make any sense, it undid a lot of character work that was built up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's also a little cruel feeling, I feel like. I feel like it's more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of intimacy that was built up, and with this, with these friends do this. I think the original intention was that Ozzy is conflicted about whether or not this robot is actually sentient, and makes a big mistake. But leaving it in gives an opportunity for some of the most interesting lines of dialogue in that scene of like, you don't understand what's going on inside me, and you couldn't possibly, because you're a human, and I'm experiencing things that you couldn't possibly understand.
Yeah. Definitely one of my favorite character. I think like the robot character. I mean, I always love the robot characters. I think they're always
so
like,
cute.
yeah. I don't know. It's just like really interesting, like because they are like kind of like a mirror for us humans to kind of see what makes us people, and like when do we stop being people and become like more like mechanical, I guess, or like electronic. So yeah, that was like a storyline I really, really enjoyed in the show.
I like hearing about how that stuff evolves a lot. On that show, The Midnight Gospel, the dog Charlotte wasn't in the script.
Oh, really?
It was that's a character that it was the first character that escaped out of the portal with Clancy.
Yeah.
It follows into all these other episodes. It even has like an important moment at the end when people try to attack Clancy. Basically, I was storyboarding the scene where they're playing pool, and Penn sent me a gif of a dog and pool balls were rolling under his fur. And so it was just a one-off gag to where balls keep rolling under this dog and getting lost. And when the zombies came in, I was like, what if he gets on the dog and all the pool balls shoot out and the zombies trip and he rides the dog.
That's great.
And then it was so fun to have him ride the president ride this dog around that he like ended up coming back at the end and caused them to ask, do we want people to come out of the portal into the real world and have characters that cross over in between episodes? Because originally that wasn't planned. And I always think it's interesting when writers or creators are down to like, hey, we're getting a positive response from this thing. It's different than what we planned. Like, let's pivot and like lean into it. I always like that.
Yeah, that happened on Common Side Effects in a big way. I can't remember exactly what the series of events was, but we have these creatures that they're not introduced in the little 6-minute teaser, but they become a very integral to the storyline, and I won't spoil anything about it, but they had been kind of excised from it, and then realizing that they were really fun and wanting to play around with this world a little more, and they ended up becoming a huge part of the show, which is sort of an unexpected. It's hard to talk about without giving too much away.
I get it.
Back to the story about that scene in Scavengers, Rachel did such an amazing job rolling with the punches on that and having to reboard a scene that was pretty final and starting from scratch, and then it ends up becoming one of the best scenes, because I think people felt like there's a real reason for this change. There's a reason. There's a domino effect. So we put a lot of production resources into making sure that like that timeline got a little expanded, so we could make that change.
That's amazing. I love when there's like, so can you walk us through a little bit like the more kind of like, I guess, production side of that trickle down effect? So first you have the script, you give it to your director and their team, and they board the scene, and then eventually someone comes up with the idea of like, okay, maybe we need to pay off that episode a little better. What are the kind of like conversations that happen? Is it first with like the line producer? Is it directly to the artist? Kind of like as a supervising director, how do you kind of start getting all of these steps to work for everybody, I guess, in the pipeline?
I think it's always a conversation first at a really top-down level, like Joe and Charles discussing it with Sean and James were co-EPs on it. So making sure that, and being writers that wanting to make sure they're making the right decision, and then chatting with me and Maud about it and saying, is this possible within the timeline we have? What will the trickle-down effect be? And usually just a question of, is this change absolutely necessary for the show to be as good as possible, or are we overthinking something? And I mean, Maud was amazing at figuring out that calculus of just like, if we do change this, it's going to affect all of these deadlines we have, and the production was built in a way that allowed for a little bit of that accordion to happen. And then eventually, once the green light is given, we gotta make the change. I would get on a call with the director and maybe the board team and just talk through it and the rationale behind it, and then possible solutions. And I was saying earlier that we didn't have a lot of reuse in Scavengers, but we did build up a repository of material that could then be reused later in the season. Oh. The beginning was very experimental and just being as free as possible, but we had so many like key drawings of Ozzy that we just came back to over and over and over. And a lot of times it was, if we had to make a change, could we figure out a way to do it in the most economical way possible? So reusing backgrounds and key layouts.
Sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like talking about that kind of stuff because I feel like supervising directors, like it's such a role that is kind of like, it's kind of difficult to talk about because it is a lot of responsibilities, and everybody kind of makes that job out to be like every single supervising director will have their own different philosophy they bring to that role because it's not really defined. You're the only single one on the show, so you can kind of make it what you want it to be. Well, first of all, did you supervise direct on anything else before Scavengers Reign, like on like a shorter project?
No, I hadn't ever done that before. I think my only comparable experience was being the animation director on that Love, Death, and Robots episode that Titmouse did, the Kill Team Kill, and then doing We the People after that, which Kill Team Kill I think was basically the same production pipeline as Scavengers, because we got to do so much of the animation, quote unquote, in house. But the storyboards were delivered by Blur, so we weren't working with the storyboards. But I guess my philosophy is the base of it is having as many conversations, as far-reaching conversations, as like casual, detailed conversations with everybody you could possibly chat with on the show, so everybody's completely understands the mission of the project.
Sure.
And with Scavengers and Common Side Effects, the mission is so unique that you just have to you have to powwow and come up with shorthand for talking about things. A lot of with Common Side Effects, it was, have you guys seen Burn After Reading, the Coen Brothers movie? And let's look at this specific scene and how the comedy works, but also how it's not overdone. And Scavengers, we talked about, I mentioned the sorcerer scene earlier. The two other scenes we talked about the most were the Revenant bear fighting scene, when Leo gets totally mauled by that bear. And the main takeaway from that was not wanting to have any characters who had kung fu abilities. Nobody was landing any Spider-Man poses. Imagining what, even if you were a real outdoorsy woodsman type, you still wouldn't be able to face off against a bear. It would just, a grizzly bear would maul you. So we looked at that scene a lot for specifically the scene with Ursula and Sam in the big dome creature with the beetles. And that way I think the impact is really intense, and it's this feeling of these are completely unmatched characters. And that just grounded everything, I think, once you talk about that. And then big part of what we wanted to do with the show was these intimate moments and a lot of eye acting, very delicate kind of eye performance. So there's a scene in There Will Be Blood when Daniel Day-Lewis's character is hanging out with this guy he thinks is his brother, and then he finds out he's been lying to him the whole time. He's not actually his brother, and the realization dawns on his face, and it's this little very subtle eyebrow motion. We would watch that scene over and over, just think how can we get something like this into Scavengers? So finding these little touchstones, I think, is a big part of what we were doing, just constantly.
Did you find a moment to get it in?
Oh, I'm sure.
Just something like it.
I think it's sort of probably the scene that comes to mind. I'm not sure if it was totally achieved in it, but a lot of Ozzy with Chris scenes. Maybe when they're at the campfire and Barry is talking. Barry's all happy to have this big family together, but Ozzy is watching Chris and is understanding that she's got her own ulterior motives. So just kind of keeping an eye on the subtext of any scene and what we could possibly inject in there.
I feel like Barry is such a, I don't know, he's such a specific character. I feel like out of the whole cast in Scavengers, he's the one that I almost felt like I've met in real life or something.
Uh-huh.
Like, he's got that, like, I don't know, very specific acting and just like view of the world. I don't know, he's a very interesting character. I don't know if you had any inspiration from like movies or shows or.
Well, early on, I mean, I don't think this is a secret or anything, but he was sort of inspired by Barry Keoghan in Killing of a Sacred Deer. He was, I think, he was written to have a fairly traumatic past, and that past isn't really talked about in the show. But this kid who Barry Keoghan is a pretty sinister character in Killing of a Sacred Deer, so it's not a 1-to-1 at all.
Mm.
And I think there was just like a spark of an idea there, but this feeling of this, what would it like? If you're 15, I don't know how old he's supposed to be, but 15 on a freighter and you're going from planet to planet, you're probably not getting a great education.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of Arrested Development, but sort of like street smart, sort of savvy. Yeah, I think Barry, a big part of what made his character work so well is the vocal performance. I mean, it's just. Mm-hmm. Dash Williams. Yeah, Dash was, I think, someone that Joe and Sean and James Charles saw in I Think You Should Leave. Do you guys watch I Think You Should Leave?
Yes.
The episode where it's like, or the sketch where Tim Heidecker is on a date at a space themed bar, and there's like a guy behind the wall who's he's mocking everybody behind an alien mask. That's Dash. Yeah. That's Dash Williams, but he just had this kind of. Okay. I don't know, a natural quality to him. I think that they loved.
Yeah, that whole little like family that was like, there was something that really real and raw, like the dysfunctionality of it. But yeah, they're like, okay, let's just like pull together, like let's pull through, and like we're here on a mission, and we just have to get this thing done, and we're pretending sort of to be. A family, but also but also we're not. There's something that's very raw and real in that relationship. I think that was but there's like a lot of tension, a lot of conflict there that I really enjoyed and made them very kind of relatable in a way.
Yeah.
I want to start peppering some questions from our listeners because we have some good one. Our patron Money Bean is asking, does it feel more or less difficult to direct a series of unconnected stories as opposed to a series that will always have the same characters at the very least? I think Moneybean is kind of referring to how Scavengers Reign, we kind of hop between characters and it's kind of more like little stories compared to Common Side Effects that looks like it's a more like kind of serialized, less of an anthology, a little bit more like a serialized kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Common Side Effects has a big cast, so we would get an opportunity to have, moments that are mostly about Capano and Harrington, or they're a cast that will grow and grow, and you'll see throughout the series this is really expansive cast. Rick, the CEO of Reudical Pharmaceuticals, plays a big role throughout the whole series. So a lot of it is you got to be able to shift gears. I actually think Common Side Effects has a bigger cast and a more challenging kind of juggling act in a lot of ways. Mm. But the fact that you get to work on a show for almost 2 years, you get so familiar with the characters, you get so comfortable with their personalities that switching gears doesn't feel as much of a challenge. And they're all so well crafted on the page that you feel like there's not a lot of questions you have. If you've done the preparation, you know where you need to take Sam or Ozzy or Levi in a specific scene. Mm. But I imagine if you were like producing all of Love, Death, and Robots, that's like a whole other. Jennifer U. Nelson, the supervising director on that, has to. There's no through line between any of those episodes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be able to like do basically 10 series at the same time, 10 pilot episodes at the same time.
Oh yeah, dude.
Crazy.
With like completely different like techniques and like different pipelines. That's so crazy.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine.
On Twitter at Tato Byman is asking, as someone who's been involved in so many adult animated series, how do you see the state of adult cartoons in this day and age? Is it more positive or negative than before?
I think I'm very optimistic about animation in general. What I'm, warily watching is the state of capitalism. I think that it's all wrapped up into like much bigger games than just what's going on in animation, and the sustainability of the ways of doing things in the past. It's just constantly changing. I think what missed in a lot of the discourse about like shows being pulled off of Max and is that in the past they just disappeared into the ether. Like things have changed so dramatically that we expect things to live forever, and I think there's a feeling that not a lot of shows are getting greenlit right now, but that might only be comparing now to like the glut that happened in the last 10 years. There's an article in I think it's a Hollywood Reporter about, maybe New York Times, I can't remember, but Netflix changing the way we consume entertainment and changing kind of how we expect entertainment to be. Like there's way too much stuff out there, and wanting to, I think, like getting back to a time when there was focus on material that had a lot of like support from the networks.
It's patience.
There's no putting the genie back in the bottle at all.
Sure.
It's not. Things aren't going to go back. They're going to keep evolving and keep changing. But I do feel like it's a scary time to be entering the industry, or any industry, basically. And I don't envy students who look at their job prospects and see that they're diminished from 10 years ago. But I think that there's a lot more adventurous work happening now than ever before. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys get a sense from like the younger viewers that listen to this that there's obviously a lot of fear and
I mean the thing is that there's social media, there's Twitter, everything is very, the algorithms at play are like powered by the outrage algorithm. So anything that's very sensationalist is what's going to get the most traction, the most likes, the most retweets. So a lot of the things that people will stumble across or read are kind of like the doomsday, kind of very much like the end is near and everything is going to shit. And it's like, in some, and I think for a lot of students it is, or people who are like in college right now, it is scary because you spend a lot of money going to college, and then you kind of want to try to pay back your loan, and then you're getting that feeling that you might not be able to like get a job right away. But I kind of want to keep like a hopeful type of like attitude around that situation, not to be like a toxic optimist or whatever, but I think there are so many ways. And even in your career, Benji, you didn't start like making a TV show right away. So you did all these other things before, which I think is like very relatable and achievable. Like you were saying, you're canvassing and you're like kind of honing in your skill on the side, and now you're here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was something Joe said on a recent talk we did at SVA. Pitching a show right out of school is probably not the best use of anyone's time. It takes so long to figure out what you want to say and how you want to say it. And if you skip the steps of developing your voice and you go right into trying to helm a $20 million project, it's not. It's like I think maybe there's a lot of like misconception about what it means to create a show. It's like creating a village, and also if you do create a show right out of school, it's really hard to step back from that, and then you're on this churn to make another show, and like how do people do that? I mean,
and then if you don't, are you a failure for the rest of your career because you made a show and then you stopped?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
that's obviously not. I mean, that like people are going back and forth all the time. I think it's important to get a breadth of experience, and I also just like making your own show is not a lot different than making your own comic, other than you're relying on a ton of other people to do it for you.
Yeah.
And so you might as well just see if you can make your own comic or make your own shorts. And so, yeah, Joe, I think, did try to pitch a lot in his early 20s, and he just was hitting a brick wall, and then just decided to hunker down and make shorts, make lots and lots of shorts. And Scavengers wouldn't have been possible without that, and Common Side Effects.
I agree with that advice.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
It's really good advice for, like, I mean, everything you said, and also just like making a comic or a short, just because it's like, okay, like that's something that like everybody's doing, like a thesis film or whatever, like in school, like you've done it once, you can do it again. Like sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of this kind of like, well, I only get to make a short film when I'm in college, and that's it, and it's the only time. It's like, no, you can keep doing that on the side. Like you can, you know, like you've done it once.
And figuring out how to do it efficiently and with the resources you have, it can lead to some really cool creative choices.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like if you can get past the idea that like when you're making a short, it has to be either the next thing that gets you hired, or everything in it has to be a portfolio piece, or like that's almost like paralyzing. Like oh, like every single shot in this has to be animated so well that it creates my future. Like, no, I mean, just make some stuff that you like.
Yeah.
But that's hard to get past, you know, when you first graduate, I feel like.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's just play too. I mean, so much of all of it is just playing around and experimenting and trusting your instincts. And I mean, I think, I can't remember if I heard this directly from Jonathan, but the way he works, and he can comment and say it's bullshit if it's not true, but it's just no second guessing. It's a lot of just like first instinct, and then execute, and the killing the judge inside your head, and the judgmental center of your head can just paralyze you. And I feel like this is something you both probably know really intimately, that like you're so prolific, both of you, that you just have to have fun with the process and not overthink every step of the way.
I think it's so funny that you bring up Jonathan, because I tried to get him on the podcast, and I will get him on the podcast. He's very shy, but he inspired me a lot. I actually did quote him a couple times in prior episodes, because I was in school with him, we were in the same class, and he would be drawing all the time. And I remember I told him, I was like, "Are you tired of working all the time?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Right now, like you're working, you're like drawing your sketchbook." And it's like, "Oh, that's not work. That's just fun. Yeah, this is fun." And then I got like the galaxy brain moment where I was like, "God damn it, he's right."
Yeah.
And,
that's why he's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
literally. And I think I don't know, I think for me, when I was in school, I was riddled with like a lot of like shame, and I doubted myself a lot, and I think I had to go through a process of being like, who cares, I gotta just make stuff, and I gotta be like unapologetic about the stuff that I make. And sometimes I don't know, sometimes I make a thing and I'm like, it's probably cringe, or it's probably not that good or whatever, but I made it, and I'm happy I made it, and somebody out there is gonna relate to it in some kind of a way.
Oh, like, yeah. And you gotta kill the cringe within the mind.
Oh yeah, dude, I this brings up a really good point. I met the voice actor who plays Goofy on Saturday, and dude, he's this little old man who he just already sounds like Goofy, like his talking voice pretty much. Wow. But he was walking around wearing a shirt covered in Goofies, and I was like, if I can get to the point where I can wear a little button-down shirt that's covered in the stuff that I do, like, and not cringe or like feel like it's embarrassing, or like, I'll probably be happy.
Yeah, that's critical. I'm definitely not there.
It's hard.
It's very hard. Very hard. But I think that's a role model right there.
Yeah.
Hank Humble 3552 on YouTube asks, "What are you most excited to accomplish with common side effects?" I mean, I guess what are you most excited that you accomplish? Because it's
Oh,
already.
well, I think it's yet to get out there in the world, and I
Mhm.
think we're all just very excited to see people's reactions as it develops episode by episode. I think Scavengers came out 3 episodes at a time, and
Mhm.
this is going to be once every week, a new, I don't know, Thursday, whenever it's going to come out, and getting to see this like organic process of people catching it and hearing about it. Adult Swim is just really great at getting like community engaged in their shows, and they have such an amazing marketing department. I'm really excited to just see how people fall in love with these characters. I mean, they're just like working on Scavengers, and I'm sure you guys feel this too when you're working on shows. They have become these living, breathing people inside your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and my favorite thing about doing this in general is, you communicate an idea either through a little drawing or through a script or through a conversation with an artist, and they get what you're saying. They work on something for weeks, and it comes back, and it totally taps into what you had in your head, but it expands on it even more. And then that
Oh, really?
process
Yeah.
compounds over and over and over and over with all the levels of production, and then you're sitting on this thing that's like a communication node. And it's all of these like conversations, all of these spiritual moments that have happened over the course of the show, and then getting that beamed into somebody's brain through the internet, and then having people react. Like on Scavengers, the little guy that dies inside the flower that I think you're drawing right now, right?
Yeah, I'm drawing you as the little guy.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. I need that tattooed on me. I think there's somebody got that tattooed. I think a few
That's
people have had it. Like somebody has it on their sternum, somebody has it on their arm. But
Whoa.
the it's such a emotionally complicated moment in the show, and it doesn't telegraph what it means. Ursula's confused about what it means. The confusion is sort of the purpose of the scene. I think there's a lot of interpretations of it that are pretty easy. Life and death cycle, and being witnessed and seeing how much that affected people, and it was affecting us as we were working on it. And I don't know, it's a shock. It's not surprising, but it's always shocking to see that feeling elicited in a stranger.
In a weird way, actually feel like there's a strange amount of parallels in between that scene and even like the colors and that scene in the Midnight Gospel where mushrooms grow out of the mother.
Oh man, that episode made me just bawl.
And I boarded that mushroom sequence.
Oh my god!
With the mother laying down, and then the birthing sequence and all that. But
I didn't know that.
I felt a lot of connection with that flower sequence, and I was like, whoa! I feel like, and I don't think that anybody was referencing anything. I think that somehow there was just a similar wavelength a little bit in even the little colors of the tendril. I don't know.
I wonder, do you guys feel like this is like so left field, but whatever. Like, I feel like we are kind of in a moment of time in maybe culture and arts where like we're kind of excited about like things that are like not just psychedelic, but also very like spiritual, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it's also where we are in our lives as like the three of us, in our mid-30s, I'm assuming. And you see your parents aging. You experienced, death probably intimately. And it makes these pieces to work on like therapeutic. I mean, when I saw that episode, I just was like, devastated. Such a beautiful.
I mean, yeah, there were people crying at their desks. Like I would walk through the studio and like the animators working on it. It was really intense, and I think that it's interesting because I think especially because I feel like especially the people telling these stories, there's probably a higher likelihood that they're not religious necessarily, but I feel like these people are creating religious feeling moments. It's like a similar coping mechanism where you're trying to find this beauty in this unexplained thing. I mean, in that world of Scavengers, it's like that's this like weird little miracle thing that like that we're making up, and it's like this, I don't know, it's an expression that's really interesting.
I think what you just said, it like mirrors the actual act of making a thing. And it's this thing, this kernel of an idea blossoming into reality, and you make a thing, you put it out in the world, you have to say goodbye to it. Like, I'm so deep in common side effects after the last year and a half that like the idea of drawing Barry, I'm like, oh my god, what does it even fucking look like anymore?
Right.
That's so true what you just brought up about like creating a project or something. It is very much like, like you're kind of like birthing something, you're putting out there in the world that's not yours anymore. It's going to interact with all these people out there, and you can't control it. You can't control the way people are going to interpret it. It's kind of like this little kid out there interacting, becoming its own thing, and then you have to say goodbye when it's like the next show comes in. That's so and
I mean, parents experience the same thing with children, and I think we experience it in our own lives too. It's like a accepting that you're sort of watching your own story unfold. And
I mean, I'm experiencing that really freshly this week because my web series is coming. It just started coming out on Friday.
Oh, nice.
And it's, I mean, and it's a shorter thing. Like I have had less time with those characters in this iteration, but also that project is something I've worked on since 2011.
Oh wow!
And is
it Fisthead?
Coming out. It's a version of Fisthead.
Oh, great!
It's called Bodyhead. But it's basically Fisthead and some other characters that can form into one guy.
I love that. I love that.
But I'm feeling that as it's coming out, like it's different than the other shorts that I've released. Mm-hmm. It feels different. It's hard to stop thinking about it. I like get emotional sometimes. I'm like, I hope people love my baby. Like I hope they like it. And if they don't like it, do they not like me? Yeah, I mean, like there's all those sort of thing, a lot of emotions.
Well, this is a problem with being off of Instagram, is I'm tapped out, and so I need.
No, it's good. You're good.
No, I'm gonna dive in. I'm a huge Fisthead fan.
Oh.
There's gonna be like a foot head and a hand head, or is already a hand head.
There's a torso head, a pelvis head who just has a penis and balls for a face.
Nice.
And there's cankle and foot head. Underhand is the other hand, and then head is the head.
I love head.
And they're trying to learn. They're trying to turn their life around and sneak into college like kids in a trench coat style.
Oh, that's fun.
Pay one tuition without getting caught. But yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
It's a weird one.
But do you feel like you're putting it out in the world? Are you going to continue working on it no matter what, or what's the goal?
Well, because it's tied up with Adult Swim, there's a little bit of a like it probably would need to be with Adult Swim if I was going to continue it seriously, and if it weren't to continue, I mean there would be probably another little mourning period, but that's how these things work. You're making characters from scratch and you kind of bring them to life, and then most shows have an end no matter what, you know what I mean? Whether they get ended prematurely or not. And so and people that haven't done this probably feel like we're crazy when we're talking about this stuff. but yeah, I mean
I think people can relate to it on so many levels. I mean, people doing art online, or just the microcosm of like making a piece of ceramics. It's like the same thing,
right?
On a 1 day level. I mean, my feeling is that it's just such a great way to spend your time, and there's, even if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter, because you're like
practice.
Yeah, you're exercising your most creative parts of yourself, and now we're working on a new pitch that is sort of like taking that energy in.
I feel like okay, I will say, however, this is just me kind of like going off memes, which is a very scientifically proven method of predicting the future. But I saw a meme that was like nihilism before, which was like a black and white picture of somebody just like hugging their knees like on the sidewalk or whatever, like life doesn't matter. And then nihilism 2.0, which is like very like 80s kind of like hat backwards, like sunglasses, bubble gum, and being like nothing matters, you know.
It's like returning back in. It's like returning into the nothing matters.
Yeah, but there's like the one where it's like nothing matters and it's very sad, but the other one is like you only live once kind of vibe, but like might as well just kind of live it up, I guess.
It feels good to be in the other one.
Yeah.
It felt good to be radical, dude.
It did.
So it's like, and I was like, we might be, I don't know, I think we might be going back to an era kind of like that, where it's just like, yeah, everything's fucked and we know, but like, what are, you know.
It's like people are tired of being radical. They want to go back to being radical.
It's really,
you know
hard,
what I mean?
But it's very hard to actually get your finger on the pulse of what is happening. And this is what we talked a lot about Jossum, is that we've lost touch with what's Jossum. If you were to ask a 17-year-old what's Jossum, they would say like Skibbity Toilet and the latest season of Death Note.
Well, how did the creators of that know what was Jossum? You know what I mean?
I don't know. That's a very good question.
I think Skibbity Toilet does not give a shit at all, and I think that's why it's so exciting. I don't know. Have you both watched it?
Yeah, a bit of it, yeah.
I've watched limited portions that I could handle.
Oh, come on, Sean. Out of everybody, I thought you would love it.
Dude, I've tried like several times. I maybe get like 15 deep, and I'm like, I still sort of don't understand
really
what it is, because it feels similar to kind of like the Team Fortress style bad 3D memes that came like 15 years before or something, 10 years before, but like a new version. And I mean, people love that song, I guess. I feel that's like a big song.
Okay, I feel like, okay, sorry, like I have to do this. I'm sorry.
You're ranting about Skibbity Toilet?
I have to rant about Skibbity Toilet because I love Skibbity Toilet. This was how in the comments people were like, okay, V's canceled. But listen, I think there is something that is so unhinged and primal in Skibbity Toilet that it speaks right into your reptilian brain, and it's just like, oh, scary and funny, and it's like the perfect combo of both. Like, not only is it like super primal, like the very first video that you see, it's like, oh no, it's like a scary environment, and it's dark and kind of like dirty, and it's got all this like backrooms feel to it. And like, I don't, what is it? What's gonna happen? Oh my god, something's gonna jump at me. And you do get jump scared, but then it's like a funny song. And so it's like it's like
V's not alone in getting jump scared, is what V's trying to say.
And it's
V and everyone else
gets
jump scared.
What I'm saying is that like it's a very childish fun where it's like you get spooked, but right away you laugh about it. It's very much like it's like a prank type of content. Like you get kind of like pranked like continuously, and then on top of that there's like this kind of bullshit meta to it where it's like there's a war and there's like kind of like hints of like the lore is kind of like this like fascist type of like regime. And who's fighting the war? The heads in the toilet. So it's like same thing, same concept. You're in a very oppressive, very scary environment where it's like you're dealing with something that is like that's like downright like scary, like to the core of your being. Like you don't want to be in an environment like that, but who's gonna save you? Guy in the toilet. Now you laugh. Now it's like, okay, it's fine, this is insane, We're all,
Sure.
so there's like something, I don't know, for me, there's something that's very at the emotional core, and like people are going to be like, what the hell did V smoke before this podcast? Well, like for me,
No,
I like really relate.
you're speaking my language.
I relate to his content a lot because I'm like, we have to make fun of this. We can't just make fun of it so we have to just kind of make it absurd, and now we can laugh about it. Yeah.
People in the comments, if you want to draw V with their head in the toilet,
I would actually love that.
Like we want some fan art. Yeah, we want some crossover.
Please. I also think, I mean, V, you're so tapped into like the occult backroom stuff, and I think people getting to like discover something that seems like it's come out of a portal from another horrible dimension on the internet is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the same success of a lot of these like indie YouTube sensation, is that they don't seem like they're like corporate products.
Yes.
They're just an honest weirdo in their basement.
Yes.
Something really interesting that I heard in an interview recently. It was I think the streamer Sketch said it. He said that typically during a lot of the year he plays video games because people want to watch someone play video games, but during the summer all of his streams turn into going outside and doing stuff streams, because he said people in the summer, kids now, want to watch people going outside in the summer.
That's
instead of like doing it. They want to watch people go outside in the summer. And I was like, whoa. Like, I mean, a lot of it is like living, you're like living vicariously through these people or in the animation characters, or, in, I think that one of the hooks of Scavengers, Rain, is like the idea that you are exploring a new world that you've never seen before, creature by creature and function by function. And there's like a mystery to that. There's like what's the last time since you actually discovered something completely new, like that feels satisfying. Mm-hmm. And the idea of like trying to figure out what is satisfying for people right now, I think is both confusing and also very interesting.
Yeah, I that's really well said. I feel like the hope with Scavengers is that because it didn't have like a traditional marketing campaign of any kind, that it is totally word of mouth. And I mean, the Reddit thread, like the Reddit community is really active, and people will get to have an ownership over something because they feel like they've just like discovered it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it'd be nice though. Marketing would have been fun though.
Dude, yeah. Like, I mean, we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but man, this is such a problem right now in animation. We get very little support with marketing. On YouTube at Hellzapoppin 9326 is asking, any plans to release supplemental material that, like behind the scenes of making Scavengers Reign, like concept art, pencil test, DVD special, feature type stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean, no concrete plans, but yeah, I think there's a feeling that as time goes by, we'll get to do more with it, and we'll be putting out more material. This is the first bit of merch, though. I just happen to have it on my desk. This is this incredible record that Mondo put out.
It's beautiful, too.
Yeah, look at this thing.
The cover's beautiful.
Wow.
And it's Nick Snyder's score, and Nick also did the score for Common Side Effects. It's a cool like sleeve thing to cut out, and then the record itself is this funky.
Wow, that is so cool.
It's beautifully done, and it's the only like actual merch that's available. It might be sold out right now, but we have some material that's already out there in the world. A lot of it is just on individual artists' pages. Like I actually could look at Barry's design. I found Magali Dunyak's website, and she's got a lot of the character designs posted. And then Caleb Wood has posted a lot of his concept art to his website. Actually putting in the work to do a behind the scenes, little documentary would be great. It is a massive amount of labor. And
sure.
Yeah, we have a backlog. I have a whole Google Drive folder with tons and tons of material. Titmouse is really the repository of all the actual archive.
I mean, I know a lot of people that would be super interested in getting a peek at that. I am a huge fan of like the behind the scene. Like I miss bonus features on DVDs, bloopers. Like I'm really like trying to do something similar. Like recently when I release stuff is like I really want to like release this, little sketchy things that didn't make it, or like little deleted scenes or whatever. Like I love seeing that stuff.
And you have a Patreon, right?
I do not personally. What the main way that I kind of do that, I stream a lot on Twitch, and I usually sort of let my Twitch sort of be the way that people support me and subscribe and stuff like that. But I should get it. I should get a Patreon. I just haven't.
It's a lot of work, I think.
It is a lot of work. I would probably get a Ko-fi.
I
feel like
what is Ko-fi?
It's more associated with, it's like a smaller expectation of giving, like enough for a cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee.
Well, I mean, it depends on where you're getting coffee from. That's getting expensive too. But like I think that the expectation is there's a little bit less that the artist is like providing, and more, it's sort of like, hey, like here's like $2 here and there, like that kind of stuff.
But you can run it just like a Patreon.
Sure.
The only thing is that on Ko-fi you cannot post anything that is like mature, I would say. So
no hentai, none of that.
No
stuff.
hentai. And anything that's just kind of like edgy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the biggest difference with Patreon. You gotta keep your little character censored.
Yeah. What about crotchhead? How are you gonna deal with that?
Yeah.
I brought on an editor strictly to handle all of the mosaic like blur tracking.
Oh wow!
Of all the scenes that he's in, and as we did animate him for the most part behind the censor, fighting people with his wiener face.
That's great.
But yeah, that was time consuming, and at a certain point, I devised some ways to either keep it hidden or stage it in certain shots where if it's not being immediately used, kind of angle it in a certain way, or eventually he may or may not get dressed. This is a little spoiler.
Oh, man.
Will he get dressed? Will he find his clothes? Find out on Friday.
This Friday. Okay, I'm waiting with bated breath. Well, I gotta watch episode 1.
Oh my god! Yeah.
We have another really good question from YouTube from Helza Poppin. What informs your sound design decisions? I discovered Benjy Brooke, in their short film Power Hungry on Super Deluxe.
Yeah, a sound design on that was a close collaboration with my best bud of many, many years, Kenny Kuziak. We've known each other since 4th grade, I think. And he did all the music and sound design for that. And I mean, that one was we were both really like inspired by Disaster Piece and the sound design of Fez, and like these like crunchy synths. But he's a composer and a sound designer, but allowing it to be musically driven sound design. And animating on, when you're animating on 2s, you get this rhythm where things are kind of on 12s and 24. It's like things kind of hit at a BPM.
Sure.
And then you make a distinct decision to try to keep to that, then you do have this kind of underlying backbone rhythm to it. So there's a musicality to that short that I think he was catching on a lot of the rhythm I was doing, and then we were bouncing back and forth. He did a lot of the sound design pretty early in the boards. And I mean, Scavengers is a totally different thing, and Axel Steechen did the sound design for the show. But the main thing on Scavengers was to try to play against type of creature and do something that was unexpected. So if there's wall of background noise for forest, you don't hear chickadees, obviously, but you don't hear any birds. You hear like these like odd kind of we talked a lot about ASMR.
Oh, interesting.
The main touch point. So if a character's touching a plant really close up, it has a feeling like, even if you don't see all the little polyps and bumps on the leaf, you might hear it. And this, to microcosm and then the macro.
Yeah.
As much as
How many ASMR streams of someone licking an silicone ear microphone did you sit in to
many.
Do quote unquote research?
Research, yeah. No, I'm just a subscriber. I'm just a fan of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific. For Scavengers, we talked a lot about a YouTube channel called Primitive Technologies.
Oh,
do you know that? Do you know that page? Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
I love it.
And the rhythm of building a hut and getting down to pulling a palm frond apart and making twine and then stringing the whole structure. And Joe cut a kind of sizzle reel early on of the look and feel of Scavengers, and a lot of it was the little hand movements of primitive pursuits or primitive technologies.
That's cool.
That is so cool. We like to ask our guests if you guys were like working on this like third page this entire time. Wow, I'm so late to the game. That's so
sorry. You've been slow at switching pages this round.
I can't.
I was drawing too big. I'm so not used to this, and I was drawing too big. I'm still drawing too big.
It's okay. It's okay. I got this. Benjy, do you experience ever like creative block? If you do, what does it feel like for you, and what you do to kind of like push through it?
Oh yeah, I think it's happened at various times in my life to larger extent, and usually it's a moment of reconfiguring what I'm into and what the purpose of doing the work is. It just ebbs and flows, I think, as the years go by. And I feel like I have less creative block now because there are things that I am kind of comfortable knowing that this is the idea I want to pursue, or the concept, or the avenue, and knowing what I like. But when you get creative block, it's usually you're working through an idea, and I think creative block happens when you give up the fight to figure it out, or you fight too hard and you don't, pull back a little bit and let the ideas come more through the ether and through meditation or just, letting things flow. But yeah, definitely. A lot of it comes from fear of failure or fear of doing the wrong thing or, spending your time on the wrong thing. But I generally feel like if you go down one rabbit hole and you feel like you've hit a dead end, switch gears into another project and see where that takes you. And then that process will yield answers for the first one. And if you have 10 things going that are like that, it's just constantly feeding back and forth.
It's a good answer.
I love that. I love also the analogy with the fight. Fighting too much or like not enough. I feel like that's a really good way to put it.
And I've been feeling recently that the discomfort you feel when you're working on a project and you don't have the answer right away is the most uncomfortable feeling in the world, but it's also like it's the moment right before you get the transcendence and you get like the solution feels perfect, and then that solution will feel wrong tomorrow. And so it's just this it's a constant ping pong between I figured it out and I'm total dog shit, and accepting that reality.
That's so true. I think it's so funny you bring that up because it is so it's like I don't know how to describe that like mental space that we kind of actively look for that, but yeah, it is very relatable. You're like down in the dumps, like I'm a failure, and then you see the idea and it's like the best feeling in the world, and then it's like that roller coaster all over again.
Yeah.
So funny.
So much of it is just mania and delusion and
yes.
Riding waves of manic delusion.
Yes.
Trying to trick yourself into being motivated or inspired, finding. Dude, I'm so easy to trick. I know how to trick myself almost every time. I can trick myself in a day. It's different all the time, but I have like a set group of things that I know like traditionally this will get me motivated. It might take me a little while, like whether it's like drawing something different, whether it's like, for me sometimes if words feel like they're getting stuck, sometimes I'll put on a beat and like freestyle rap alone, just to make words. It'll make words feel less important. But yeah, it depends on what it is. Sometimes if I feel stuck, I'll be like, I'm clogged. I need to fill a page full of the worst drawings and compositions possible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to like spit out so many bad, ugly, like it'll look like a little kid drew it. I need to just get all of them out of me. Maybe they're just like clogging me up. Sometimes it's watching something that inspires me. Sometimes it's streaming, because it just makes me sit in a seat, and even though I'm going to be working slower, people are looking at me work. Like it like puts like I'm being watched. And so it just depends on what the situation is, like what I'm having trouble with.
All of that's very relatable. I think working in this office has helped me also stay focused, because I am in it's a fishbowl glass, right? And people
everybody can see you.
Yeah.
But also you were doing a job at a place, and it's sort of like, if you're not working, then you'd better be I'm sure there's places you'd rather be if you're not working, so you better be working, right?
Oddly,
it's always helpful.
Here it's sort of just it's the place I want to be, other than, at my apartment. I love being in my home, but
yeah,
the feeling here is so electric, and we're constantly talking about new ideas, and Sean and James and Joe are creative powerhouses, and so it's an infectious environment to be in.
Ping-ponging off of each other, that probably it's probably like turns it into like a renewable resource, you give the stuff to them, and then they feed something back into you, and you're just like always energized. That's cool.
But creative block is definitely something that it could feel like a little death of the soul, and I think figuring out ways to recharge is really important. And for me, it's probably reading and watching movies that challenge me more than movies that feel like, I don't know, reading books and reading movies that are a breadth of human experience that I'm not just like going back to the same well over and over, but re-injecting like a new angle into my way of thinking.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But yeah, I may be reaching my steam limit.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. We were like kind of getting close to wrapping this pod, so it all comes together nicely. Is there anything you want to plug before we wrap it up?
Definitely Common Side Effects. January, people mark it on their calendar, and Common Side Effects will be something that will fill the scavenger-sized hole in your heart until more Scavengers comes around.
That's perfect. Well, with that's the end of this creative block. Benjy, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Oh, no problem. It's a blast. Thanks, guys. And hope to see you guys in person soon.
Of course.
Yeah.
And thanks to our listeners, too. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor, Clemens, for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips we've been putting out.
If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to our Discord community. Another great way you can support us is by commenting, liking, subscribing, all of these things. Tell us what you think about Skibidi Toilet or Scavengers Reign. Which one do you like better?
They're basically the same thing.
Don't tell me about it. Just tell me. No, I'm just kidding.
Click the link in the description of this episode to find out all of these things. I've been your host, V.
And I was Sean. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.